folks. I'm Shirley Graff with the Beautification Committee. First of all, we're being recorded by Area 58. I'd like to welcome Mr. Randall. We're giving him a present tonight. It's Certificate to the Sea, which is actually the Beautification Committee, in conjunction with the Friends of the Library, is having Dr. Hannah come on December 2nd at the library to talk about his book. But we think that Mr. Howard will like this. Mr. Randall will like this book. It's the history of the Taunton River.
So you get a Mr. Sheehan who helped by
So, without much further ado, plus, just to let you know, over there we have a list of events, Halifax Beautification Committee events, fall events, and information on ticks and mosquitoes, and also some maps about the property that's being discussed tonight. And without further ado, is Tina Palmer from the Halifax Beautification Committee.
So I just want to welcome Howard Randall and his wife Betsy, and thank you for coming here. They were town residents up until somewhere in the 70s when they became expatriates and went off to Plimpton. And but Howard has been very involved with Wildlands Trust. He's on the board, past president of the board, and really helped get the Striar up and running, and also was part of the family that gave the Randall Hilliard preservation to the town. So he'll talk a little bit more about that. But we just want to thank him for all that he's done to help with the incredible resources that we have here in town. And I would like to acknowledge my brother Kit Binns, who really helped dig out some of the history of these properties that we'll be talking about today, and had found some wonderful maps that you'll see here, but there's a couple of copies there as well. Just wanted to really thank him for digging around in the history, and he went down big rabbit holes and kept calling me and was like, this is so cool, this is so cool. So, y'all ready to come on up? And for those of you, as Howard makes his way, you know, many of you know Betsy because not only did she work at the Holmes Public Library for forever and ever, but she was the past director of the library as well. Okay, because you can sit on that if you'd like, okay? I'm going to advance and you have to talk.
Okay, all right, great. Before coming, the computer and printer died, so I can start out with that, so bear with me. It's so nice to be in this room, frankly.
We really do.
A lot of fond memories. And you may not know it, but there's a lovely cupola with an exciting place to go upstairs here. Jack McCormick, who grew up on Fuller Street, says he was up there when Lindbergh flew over the town of Halifax, and he observed it. The big Plymouth fire took place shortly after we moved here in '55. And I viewed the Plymouth fire blazing from that cupola. Lloyd Calvert had a wonderful square dance group that met here 2 or 3 times a week, and we had a wonderful time and made the rounds to all of the local fairs representing the town of Halifax. So it's nice to be here. It's also nice to know that there's a beautification committee, because in my opinion, the town needs help. And I won't get into it. Well, I'll get into it a bit because it's and it's not why we left. Betsy and I loved Halifax, and I still would say we came from Randolph. So Randolph, settled by my ancestors, the Belchers, that had the first mill there. But we had all kinds of animals, and we were like on a quarter of an acre lot with 3 ponies and 2 horses, and it just didn't work out. So we came down here, bought a lovely home on River Street, the Timothy Woods house, and Timothy Woods was one of the incorporators of the town of Halifax. So without ado, my mother always said to tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And so we'll start there. As a matter of further history, I served on the Wildlands Trust Board a number of years, and as chairman of that board. At the time, Striar came to our attention. It really resulted back in the late 1900s, before this century, when everybody was concerned what was going to happen, you know, the Y2K and whether the computers were all going to blow up. Well, there's a few other enlightened people that were worried what the train was going to do to southeastern Massachusetts, and now we know. And that prompted the creation of the Vision 2020 to try to envision what the impact of the changes that the train would bring to southeastern Mass. And obviously, pressure on land was one of the key issues that we focused on. We had the support of Barney Frank from the federal government, and I think he was probably a representative to Chico in the state legislature at the time, and they served. And we had representatives from all of the southeastern Mass towns over at SERPED, the Southeast Regional Planning and Economic Development offices in Taunton. Out of that came an initiative focusing on the Taunton River, and the Taunton River Stewardship Association, and came out of that. And in that study, the Winnetoxet at the confluence of the Taunton River came under serious study by biologist Brian Reed, who was an employee of the Trust, did a lot of the work, recognizing that this is a highly unique resource. It is today, and it was in history. The Taunton River is the second largest watershed in Massachusetts. We'd guess the Connecticut is the largest. And the headwaters start all the way up in Avon, believe it or not, come down through Brockton as the Lapfield rivers, to the west out of Camp Nickanucket, is it? I can't remember the name, but and the Town River in West Bridgewater, and the Setauket River in East Bridgewater, and below that the Nemasket, which comes all the way from really South Middleborough, southeastern Middleborough, to join the Taunton just south of where we are. So, because of that study, Mark Premack was on that Vision 2020, and as I said, Brian Reed did basic work here to study not only Striar Conservancy, but prior to that, the Randall across the river. It's also interesting in terms of where did all this land, how did we folks end up with it? South of the, if I could say, south of the Winnetoxet is an area called the 26-man purchase. And it was one of the very first purchases.
So let's just talk a little bit about this first, and then we'll go back to
okay. All right. So, okay, we can get to Thompson Street. That's aluminum, by the way. it was stolen. If you remember, some of us are old enough to remember when they were robbing houses for the silverware and the copper out of the houses. And the bronze sign that was on this was stolen, along with the one that was over on between the lakes. And Oscar Gassett, a name known, I would guess, to a few people in this room, got together with the Clarks, who ran a sign factory on East Street, or West Street and Plimpton East Street in Halifax, and we cast those out of aluminum. And I think it says aluminum at the bottom, and I actually put that one up myself. I was probably, I don't know whether I was in high school or whether it was during a college summer spree at home. So this is the site of the, supposedly, and I don't want to get Hatfields and McCoys going here, but the Thompson estate, although Wikipedia and others have the Bosworths as the first people. I'm not going to go there. But Lieutenant John Thompson is credited in 1675 with building this. And if you know that date, you know that's right at the very beginning of the King Philip's War. And so this house was burned down during King Philip's War. Where do we go next? Yeah. So we get back to the 26th. Our history, Halifax's history, is closely tied to the history of Middleborough. And I guess I learned too, to Plimpton, that we were formerly, I would guess, East Halifax, Plimpton perhaps. And this was a 26-man purchase, which was purchased on behalf of people who were residing in Middleborough. Southworth was the chief person, one of our Pilgrim ancestors, joined by 26 others. Yeah. The Winnetoxet served as an ancient waterway for the Native Americans. As I understand it, I guess you're going to have an expert on that subject at some point, so I'll defer to them to the real facts. But what I know from conventional wisdom or whatever, the Taunton River was the way to get resources out of this area. And the resources of prime concern were wood and iron, of all things, bog iron. And it's rumored, and I believe it's true because of features that we find on Striar, that flat-bottom barges were probably built in this area for that sole purpose. Dighton, which is further down, was a seaport, and a customs house was in Dighton. Where you go over the river in Dighton past the agricultural school, the old house on the right was a custom house. And they would bring the goods up, coming from England, up there, and they used a trail with oxen and donkeys and horses to drag flat-bottom boats up to Taunton as a seaport. So Halifax was known for its wood, and it was known for its bog iron, and eventually, Kingswood belonged to the king, and he would use some kind of hot stamp to say, put the royal crown on it, and they were typically boards a foot wide or wide. And our ancestors being cunning, I'm sure, in the face of the king, you may often find those boards on the second floor of the house, so that when authorities came, they wouldn't see the king's crown on the boards, but you might find them on the second floor of the house.
So it was any wood that was...
A foot wide or wider belonged to the king. That's just like, as did all the land here. You know, that's what you do, you stick the flag in the ground, and this is us, and it was thanks to Roger Williams, who kind of reined us back and said, gee, you really ought to pay for some of this stuff when you get it from the Native Americans. Bog iron, I think a lot of, if you go in the woods here, you will find also that as things progressed and the iron industry developed here, and foundry industry developed in the Bridgewaters, you know, the Perkins Foundry, I think, is going to close, if it hasn't already closed, is one of the oldest foundries in America. It took, I was told, 33 acres of wood to create charcoal, to melt the bog iron, to get ingots of iron to either cast here or ship off to the king. That's a lot of wood. And what eventually slowed things down, of course, was they having to go further and further afield to get this wood. But what they supplied to the foundries was not lengths of wood, we call wood, it was charcoal. And you will find out in the woods of Halifax, and there was, I think, one on the Randall Hilliard Preserve. There, I'm sure, I think there was one up by the ball fields and the soccer fields up in the west end of town here. There was a pit there. Yeah, so they would chop the wood up, pile dirt on top of it, light it, and it would smolder and create charcoal. And that's what got sent to the founders in Bridgewater. So it is really all about resources. And the 26 men, sorry girls and women, they were out after resources. The 26-man purchase covers all the land to the north, bounded by the Winnetoxet and by the Taunton and Nemasket River to the west, and all the way around the Winnetoxet to somewhere down near the old Indian Trail, which was Route 44, between Taunton and Plymouth Colony. That's the 26-man purchase. It's a huge piece.
You'll see it now.
Yeah, the Cumberland piece fits within that. And
Tell us about that.
yeah, I had hoped to get you a map of that because it's interesting. It was I did get a map, but it wasn't the detailed map. Some years ago, Wildlands and others tried to make a run at the Cumberland Fields, and we had to do a title search. And so we did a composite of 2,000 acres. But you can see that they were divvied up into varieties lots. So everybody had a place to cut. That's the Great Cedar Swamp. You could have cedar for shingles, and you could have cedar for siding, fence posts. And along the river, I have a map, a small map of the area around my parents' house, where the grass that we don't see anymore because the river has been beautified by nutrients from the cranberry industry. There would be marsh grass growing, and people were given little pie-shaped pieces of the land along the river in order to graze a cow and harvest marsh grass to overwinter their animals. Yeah. That gets us to Dan Striar. Dan Striar purchased the Crosby Farm. And I don't quite remember what date that was. But Dan was, at one time, the largest landowner in Massachusetts. He sold out to what became the New Braintree Prison. That was his land. When the Native Americans were going to take land and to build a casino off of Plain Street and off of Thompson Street, that was Dan Striar land. And the big subdivision just north of the big white house, Crosby House, that was all part of this, as was a good portion and most of the Striar Preserve. So as I said, we started to go after these properties because of their significance ecologically. There's a wonderful, great floodplain, and I think in the future, preserving land around these floodplains, Plimpton just did it, the Turkey Swamp on Route 58 in Plimpton, there's state money out there. So you have this sponge, if you will, that can absorb water and also feed it back into the environment. So I think there's going to continue to be money to purchase those properties. We identified first, I think, Randall Hilliard, and later Striar. And it was, Dan had passed away. I knew Dan personally because he was a benefactor of the Old Colony YMCA. And I've served on their board for over 50 years now. And Dan was instrumental in putting let's say, the swimming pool in the Middleborough Y. That was a gift that Dan made to us. And according to his son, he used to come out here and drop his son off to visit this preserve. And so his son was very happy to participate in the purchase. It wasn't all giveaway. We had to come up with, I think there were 11 house lots along Thompson Street that we had to purchase from he and his sister and her husband. But that money came from a number of sources. The Sheehan Family Foundation was one of them. And so the land got purchased and preserved. And the Sheehan family also participated in preserving the Randall Hilliard Preserve. That was a self-help grant. Again, Wildlands figured heavily in that. And that we did all of the writing. We had to kind of parachute into this place to get the attention of the select board at the time. As you recall, there was a lot going down. This town did its most best to try to not let the 2,000 acres of Burge Pond get into stay in conservation. They wanted their money, even though they weren't entitled to their money. But we helped write the successful grant, Trails Grant, and with the help of this, again with the Sheehan Foundation, the Randall Hilliard land was preserved.
And now the Wildlands Trust maintains.
Yes, Wildlands still maintains it, and they would love people to come and help them with that. I sat with Karen yesterday. We have, I don't know how many acres now, it's approaching 9,000 acres under management. And what that means, we have some fee interest land where we literally own land, and we have conservation restrictions where people put a restriction on their property that it won't be built upon, but will stay in some conservation use. There are other restrictions such as agricultural protection restrictions that are available today to preserve agricultural land. We just purchased a huge tract of land across from the Oliver Mill. I think that's several hundred acres. That was partially done with an agricultural preservation. It was partially done with money from the town and other sources. That was a huge dairy farm at one time. It abuts the home of the people that ran the mill there. So it's a wonderful addition. It's maybe a mile or better of frontage along the Nemasket.
Where is that?
It's right across from the street that comes out by Oliver Mill.
Town?
Middleborough, yeah.
Oh,
So, yeah, this is something your brother, I think, found. We couldn't flatten it out, but the 26-man purchase is this piece of property up here. The rest of these are purchases that were made to what became Middleborough. Across the river is, and I don't know whether we have that slide, or Tina, or the pictures that shows the Indian Titicut, and I have it here.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah, that one.
yeah. Titicut's an interesting place. It's what became of Bridgewater. It's interesting in that there was a deed reverser in the deed of that by the Indians to whomever, that if it ceased to be occupied by the Indians, or by, as a reservation, it would go back to the original owners. And there is at least one Native American descendant who is trying to get that reverter. Won't that be interesting when they say Bridgewater is ours? But the confluence of the Taunton, I don't know whether you have the slide that has the names.
I don't think I have that other.
Yeah.
But there are copies of that.
Yeah, there are. These territories were broken up into different tribal lands. 26 men came actually from somebody north of here, Chickatawbut. And, Chickatawbut Road, I think many of you know, goes through Milton and north of Randolph, Chickatawbut Street. And he came down into this territory. Meanwhile, the natives from the Wampanoags to the east and the Cape and other Indians in Rhode Island owned most of this land. I believe that Chickatawbut probably owned the land that the Striar came out of. There's a wonderful book, if you like reading deed after deed after deed, but it's entitled Indian Deeds. And, but 26 men was one of the first in a group of purchases that eventually became the town of Millville. And as I said earlier, Plimpton then figures into Halifax's story, but so does South Halifax, as we refer to it, in the neighborhood, really came out of Millville and out of purchase. This is the area here on the manufacturing. It is part of 26 neighborhoods, so for some reason they've chosen to highlight it differently. But that is the area where you would find these little pie-shaped lots that were used to graze animals.
And then this land was acquired from your two families.
Yeah, and I think it's about 250 acres combined. Yeah.
Combined with the Striar?
With the Striar, yeah. Striar, we had a terrible, there's a beautiful pond on Striar. I think it was probably man-made. But a few years back, we had those back-to-back heavy storms that began to shake the bridges and down in Taunton. They weren't sure what would hold. It wiped out the Coffer Dam, the sluiceway where that pond emptied into the Winnetoxet. There's other features. The flora and fauna is unbelievable. I forget how many bird species that are here. I've personally seen otters on this property, wolves, fox. I don't know that they don't seem to mention bears, but we've had bears in our time, haven't we? Yeah, we had them in our yard. I have a picture of one behind the stone walls at the Plimpton-Halifax line. So we maintained this property. It was, I think, one of the most heavily used for some time. Karen was sharing with me. Karen is our new director. I've been there quite a few years, but director of wildlands. And we're seeing very heavy usage in the properties that we run in the northern part of our territory.
So there's something called Wallen Tuesdays, which Amy may talk a little bit about.
In fact, we'll talk a bit. Wallen Tuesdays. Yeah, it's when you have that much acreage, and we are required by statute as holders of these properties, particularly CR properties, to visit them once a year. I think our stewardship requirement is, and we find problems. We find lots of encroachments. There's wonderful history that your dad did, right? On Fuller Street, and that cuts through the center of this purchase. And I don't, do you have a copy of his work somewhere?
Probably the house somewhere.
Yeah, I have it somewhere. As I say, I was ill 4 years ago, and everything got moved out of the back room for me to recover in, and you know that picture, the story. So it's there. That's, he'll tell you whether it's file A or it's Z. I don't know, but it's there. Yes. Oh no, I think this might be the vernal pool.
Okay.
There's a certified vernal pool on the property, and it's a great teaching opportunity for kids. I can't stress how beautiful this particular watershed is. It was, as they say, they chopped up this land, no different than today. We're out looking for lithium. Back then, they were looking for something to put on the roof and something in their firebox or fireplace. So there was, as the Pilgrims moved west, they were looking for resources and found it certainly because it was called the Great Cedar Swamp. And the Little Cedar Swamp is on the other side of Fuller Street. And that still exists pretty much intact. I'm concerned what's going to happen in the future to, let's say, the Cumberland property. I understand it's been on and off the market. I have lined up a prospective buyer 2 years ago. It was a testing range for munitions by the same company that polluted Hanover and Norwell and that neck of the woods. And they specifically, they did incendiary bombs and flares and hull-piercing missiles. And as a consequence, I understand it that when they did water testing here, the drinking water standard for arsenic is exceeded in the Cumberland fields.
That's all done.
Yeah. And also, Mr. Peck and I believe the Carney brothers teamed up to, with the blessing of the Department of Agriculture, as I understand it, to bring night soil from the various sewage treatment plants onto that property and spread it at 50 tons to the acre was, I think, what I heard they were allowed to do. So there's deep concern that there's PFAS, which is the emerging DDT, if you will, of our generation. It's like one drop of this stuff in 3 Olympic swimming pools is the concentration. I think they just lowered the standard, I think, from 10 to 6 or something, parts per trillion, not million, trillion. So, we'll see where that plays out. But I understand that the Middleborough portion of that property, the upland, is going back on the market in October. And I'm doing research right now to see whether that might be something we could look to acquiring. What's next?
How do we,
Well, I think what's next is, obviously you folks being a beautification committee is a wonderful first step. I also understand there's another first step because I put them together with the CPA funding. And I sent to your committee chairwoman a whole series of projects that the town of Plimpton has done with CPA money. The sad part of any of this land conservation is, yeah, there are people that will donate, there are organizations and there are state agencies that will donate, but they're always kind of looking for some skin in the game, you know, and Halifax without CPA is hard pressed to have any skin in the game. As I say, we almost blew Burridge. That was 2,000 acres. We came very close to going Randall. I think what was asked of the town was $60,000 out of a maybe $600,000 deal. The state put most of that in. The Sheehan Family Foundation, I think, if my memory serves me, was about $160,000. So you can't just hope things will happen. You have to find the green stuff to make it happen. And the only thing I know of to have skin in the game that allows it to happen is CPA.
So you can also create a
Yeah.
fence or wrapping.
Oh, yeah, yeah. What I would like to see, frankly, I'd like to see you pass CPA and begin to nest egg money. I saw them tear down 2 beautiful historic homes in this town in the last year. The little house next to Grove 58 is gone into a dumpster. The beautiful cape on Route 36 overlooking the East Monpont is gone in the dumpster. You might have had a chance to save either. I understand my parents' place is up for sale. It's a very interesting home. It takes a very particular owner because the house is vertical boards, but it's also vertical boards on the inside, and it's beautifully paneled with hand-wrought paneling and built-in display cases and very beautiful woodwork. It also has a couple of places where you could defend yourself against the Indians. There are a couple of portholes. Most of these homes ended up build a big house, then put a summer kitchen on. So where you go out into what was probably the summer kitchen in that house, either side of the door, there are little square openings where you could tuck your musket out. And it, to the best of my knowledge, well, that house was built long after King Philip's War, about 100 years after King Philip's War. So obviously the Friends is one way to start with Striar. The fee interest of the Randall Hilliard went to the town of Halifax. The Wildlands Trust owns a conservation restriction on that. I fought and fought and fought. One of the conditions that we asked when my mother was still there, my sister was still there. They didn't appreciate deer being dragged across the front lawn, so I asked that they not hunt. After much cattle prodding, the town of Halifax for 1 year put up no hunting signs on the property. There was an obligation to put a sign up, never seen it. I don't think any of you have ever seen it. Ever seen a sign that says Randall?
And then there's no access into that.
Oh, yes, there is. Yeah. Between Kate Hilliard's house and our house, there's probably maybe 100-foot access. At the other end, the long building that's on that property is actually a carriage shed that came from the Unitarian Church in Dorchester. And the minister was concerned that they'd burn that and get the church in with it. So my father and a fellow named George Berg lugged it home, and the Newcombs borrowed a sheep trailer. No. So just past that, the center, the easternmost boundary is the center of the Winnetoxet. So there is an area there. And
So there's a way into this preserve?
Yes,
now,
there is.
There's no parking or anything like that?
No. In fact, the family had donated some of the money, hopefully to be used for the parking for this, but finding no interest on the part of the town, I think Wildlands chose to use what we gave them to create the parking.
And there may or may not be some paths.
There were wonderful paths.
Yeah,
And there
there
were
were.
bridges and walkways over the wetlands. Anna
What
Swallow.
happened
No, and there's been huge blowdowns there. But the town does own one lot on the Little Cross Street and Pratt Street, and that could, with some wetlands work and crossing work, could also be an access that would give you the full length of Randall Hill. Elsewise, you could go in just past Katie's, because there's a little brook that runs through there. And there was a bridge out behind, and over that brook, you could actually drive a Jeep or
Is this the map?
Yeah, that's the map I was looking at. I'm not no Native American expert, but, you know, this was sort of a Connecticut region, or Great River. We had, well, I think what it's called the Great River Preserve in recognition. This is what the Native Americans called it. This is a map.
You gotta talk into that.
Yeah, Setauket and Matfield rivers, they come together here into the and join the town river, and then come down here. Yeah. We're hoping we can find canoe and kayak launching areas next along here. We're looking over here. This is the Winnetoxet. This is probably Thompson Street. So we're right in this area here with Striar and Randall. But I frankly would, if the town were willing to do it with certain restrictions, let's say if you wanted to put a well on the property, let the fee interest go to somebody else, and let the town end up with a conservation restriction. Because quite frankly, nothing has really happened in, I don't know how many years it's been now. I've lost heart and I've lost time in terms of what should be happening out here. It's such a beautiful area. And those who have walked Striar, it's every bit as lovely as Striar. Yeah. When you do go out on Striar, I don't know whether it still shows, I think you'll see to the right on the riverside a small pit area. And I think that's where they built the barges and floated them down. And people in my time, often when we have high water in the spring, we go all the way to Fall River. Because I sadly poked a hole in my sister's brand new Old Town canoe going out the Winnetoxet out into the Taunton. Yeah. So I wish the town luck in beautifying it, and also with CPA, frankly. Without it, you won't have the resources, I'm saying. Yeah, everybody likes to see their money leveraged today. And so that means you have to have something in hand to make it happen. Any questions?
And I would like to also introduce Amy Burt.
Yeah.
Who's here from Wilderness.
Good. Are you on the conservation side of it? Or?
Myself, so I'm on the programming side, so I just
Oh, you
joined
are?
at the tail end of August.
Oh, you did? Okay. That's why I don't know you.
It's a pleasure to meet you. So yes, I help align the youth and adult programs, and we actually have an upcoming program at the Striar Conservancy happening on October 25th. We have a Halloween night hike that's happening, and pending mosquito radar, we hope to run it with one of our volunteers. It'll be happening from 6 to 8 p.m. And I have a little flyer on the table over there for the free to check it out. If you have any fun kids, please speak to.
Yeah. Could we put the map back up?
Yeah, which,
Yeah, well, the first map of the Striar.
I'll just go all the way backwards. Good, and then we have questions while we're getting back here. Questions for Howard?
Originally, these paths went out by this is the pond. And they're interesting enough, there was a roadway, because I'm certain this was a mill pond at one time. And there was an interesting safe thrown into this pond, and I think it came out of King's Store when they were robbed years ago. John, do you remember when they were robbed? I think this is where the safe from King's Store ended up. But this road went between Thompson Street and River Street. But we did have trails that encompassed this. I think this is actually where that placket is, the Thompson placket, and this is town-owned land. I think that's what that little triangle is. Yeah. And as I say, Randall Hilliard, this area right here is frontage. And if this weren't here, you'd see frontage down here as well. So, and this is the town-owned.
So there may be a place to get in from
Yeah,
that.
I would say that's what this is. Yeah. If you've never seen a river otter, they're beautiful.
I think I read that Halifax is in the process of considering Community Preservation Act, right? So does everybody know what that is really about? Because that's,
Yeah.
okay.
There's
That's
a lot.
critical to this sort of stuff, or anything to do with this.
Yeah, we have a committee going.
Okay. Anything to do with historic stuff, housing or green space?
Yeah. Some of the, I will call them upscale towns, Duxbury, Cohasset, they grabbed it.
That's
The day it came out.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Wealthy towns,
And,
wealthy towns
yeah.
grab the money right away.
Right away.
Using matches from
Yeah.
the state.
Yeah.
And those matches are greatly diminished.
Diminished
More and
now.
more people
Yeah.
have finally got it, but the
Yeah.
wealthy towns grab it right away.
Right away. And I could tell
But
you
it's
that,
still a
the
good
amount
thing to
of-
do. I mean, the amount of taxes you
Yeah.
pay on CPA is quite small,
Yeah.
and you still do get something from the state.
and I sent over a whole list of projects that, the most recent land conservation project was the turkey swamp off of 58. Yes?
I just want to say that the Halifax ballot question on the CPA, we do have our committee that's supporting that, and I'm chairman of that committee, and I have some information if anyone wants to get information. But it's one of the, in fact, there's several members of the committee here tonight, and I will tell you that we appreciate the support that you have given us tonight, but also in
Yeah.
talking about the CPA,
Yeah.
because it's very
Yeah.
valuable, and Halifax is one of, Halifax and East Bridgewater have it on their ballot this year.
Yes.
And there are like only 4 towns
Yeah.
around us, including us, that are not.
Not in it, yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
missing out on.
Somewhat embarrassing when you look at the map.
Yes, it is.
who do the do's and the don'ts. But again, getting back to this, this was a resource and still is. It's a recreational resource now, but the wood, this is some of those Native American preserves are named after his, where the fish are. You know, as a kid, with no wife, you knew when they were here, the seagulls would be flying over the Winnetoxet River.
Howard,
Yeah,
can you walk from Thompson Street to River Street through the preserve without going on someone, down the old road that used to go through?
yeah. I don't believe you can, Paul.
Without going on
You
people's
know,
personal property?
yeah. That's another problem we have here. You know, when the housing estates, that's his family owns land that abuts the Burridge property, the Fish and Game property. But it's very, very difficult. We would love to see that someday be used for that purpose, but it's very difficult to get through those. But
When I say different, I'm asking if you can do it without going on somebody else's.
I don't believe you can. Yeah.
I can actually make a comment. That is my property at the end, so anytime you want to cut through, you.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful.
My mother would have taxed it, so if you do that road there, then it comes to my property.
On River Street?
Correct.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So maybe at some point there would be a trail easement or something that could be established. And that would, it's nigh impossible to get across the river. It's what's happened to the river is you can barely see the channel now. And that's really from beautification. It's all of the stuff coming from the cranberry bogs upstream. They're required to have tail race ponds, but it doesn't do the trick. And Fish and Game has just purchased a huge piece, happens to be in Plimpton, but not far from Halifax, which will be a wonderful resource for Halifax people as well. There's almost 600 feet of frontage. It doesn't quite yet go back to the, but it will if I have anything to do with it, yeah, to the river.
Other questions? No. We wanted to tell you too that,
the Beautification Committee will be sponsoring a walk on Saturday in the Striar, so you can come along. And I've been told that a couple of people from Wildlands will be there to help with the walk. So that'll be really good. And so it starts at 10 o'clock. Wear appropriate clothing, boots, spray yourself with bug spray, but we'll bring some too. And we'll go take a peek at what we just heard about. So we want to thank you a ton for being with us. Is there anything else you need to add? Or?
Yeah, you weren't able to add that last slide.
You asked me to put that map, the map of the Bridgewaters. That, you want to go back to that?
Yes.
Well, now I've got to go all the way forward.
All the way forward. One of the other things.
The what? Oh, right. So if you're coming to the Striar to do the walk, park on, the parking lot is a little tiny thing, so it'll get filled fast. But park along the street side of the Striar. Don't park across the street from the Striar, because it's not. For those of you who know the difference between north and south. Right. So you want them to park on the north side?
You would park on the side that's northbound.
Okay. Whatever. Park where the Striar Conservancy sign is, on that side of the street, not on the other side. Hopefully we'll have some cones there that tell you not to be there. Oops. It's after all this, I think. Ta-da! That one?
What's happening here is that, this is a trail that is now being managed by the Appalachian Mountain Club. It's called the Bay Circuit Trail. It starts on the North Shore and actually ends up, if you take the back road to Duxbury, where there's a placard there, the 46 parallel or whatever, that open space just past that is where the trail
part of that
ends.
goes to the garbage.
Yes, I suspect it does. We're trying to work with some property owners along 106. It comes out on 106, and Mrs. Hathaway, John, you'll remember Mrs. Hathaway from Silver Lake. She gave us quite a bit of land. And Mary Cherry was her other name. She gave a piece in there. So we're trying to find, there's quite a stretch where people have to walk along 106, but we're trying to get people to grant a trail easement that would get them off the street. But this would delay, they have a regional person, she's sleeping in somebody's backyard because she came down to walk this whole part of the trail. But the Bridgewaters are getting together, and that's what's prompted East Bridgewater to look at CPA, so that we can create this trail through the West Bridgewater, East Bridgewater. And it isn't a stretch to get people down here. We've also are looking to see what we can do along the Winnetoxet to connect to East Street so that we can have trails in the woods. I was able to raise some money for the town of Bridgewater, who is going to have a trail along Summer Street. I think it's almost 2 miles of trail. And I just got notice today that it's going to the town meeting to accept an easement from the prison folks that, the prison is right across the street. This is a great place to put your canoe in. So people will, this trail will be in here, okay, and come out to here somewhere. But it'll be along the Taunton River. And the parking will be very close for canoe launch or kayak launch into the Taunton. So lots of good things happening. They are using, frankly, the resources of Bridgewater. The geology department is doing most of the work. So you should look to using them to help you with signage and the rest. So if you need help connecting, I can do that. So I wish you luck with your CPA because it's, without the money, nothing happens.
In October, what's the date in October for the next one? Next talk?
The next talk,
October what?
I think it's the 16th.
You read it?
So the Beautification Committee will be sponsoring another talk by, I'm going to just pass this over to you.
Who's the next talk? Gloria?
The next talk will be on October 16th with Gloria Bancroft from the Taunton River Watershed Association. It will be here, and she'll bring a model of wetlands, talk about wetlands, and also talk about their Wild and Scenic Rivers program. So I hope you can make it then.
Refreshments are over here, so please join us.
And information on ticks and mosquitoes and a list of activities that the Beautification Committee is coming. Thank you very much, Mr. Randall.
It was spawned out of these same efforts. So a lot of good work came out of that. So keep up the fight.
Thank you.
I have the